What's going on there, guys? Good afternoon, early evening. It is the Earthmaster here on this weekend. Beautiful sunny weekend here in California. It is November 20th, 2021, about 3:37 p.m. California time. Latest quake out there on the Earthquake 3D globe. You can see that as we spin it around. A 4.9 earthquake out here in this area of the world. Somewhat deep, 101 kilometers below the surface for that earthquake. Looking at the latest USGS map. Let's see if I can pop that up here real quick. Voila, there we go. Check out the west coast, folks. Quite a bit of movement kicking up here along the southern part of California. Looks like, well, there's a little one we had up here around Mount Lassen, but for the most part, a lot of activity throughout the eastern crest of the Sierra Nevadas. Even some activity along the San Andreas Fault stretching down into the Gulf of California. All of this, a heightened increase in pressure out here along the west coast, while the Pacific Northwest remains relatively quiet. We did have this earthquake late last night, early this morning off the coast of Oregon, way out there, 4.6, around the Blanco fracture zone. But the Cascadia remains relatively quiet for now. Looking at the all magnitudes confirm the lack of activity up here in the Pacific Northwest, but the major increase in activity south. Pretty much you can draw a line across from Lake Tahoe to San Francisco southward, looking at some heightened increase in earthquake activity throughout the state, including around the Garlock fault structure as well. This is an area I'm kind of watching closely here for some potential movement. With all the activity to the north here, a lot of adjustment throughout the fracture areas of past earthquakes, and all the earthquake activity along the San Jacinto Fault area and areas to the west here kind of put this area for a prime spot to watch here. Of course, the Garlock Fault structure, a very different type of setup when it comes to the plates. This here, a major plate boundary, of course, San Andreas Fault. Most of these fault systems here in Southern California do run either northwest to southeast. You can see all these lines, right, kind of in that direction. This fault system here, the Garlock Fault structure, a very different type of setup here. It does stretch across the San Andreas Fault, so it's kind of like a prime example of a major seismic hazard. I think this thing here is underestimated when it comes to producing a major quake. We did see a 2.2 near Frazier Park, 12 kilometers, kind of in that little area where the San Andreas Fault and the Garlock Fault structure meet. Just kind of watching this. I've been watching this for quite a while, but we're seeing a major increase to the north and south of there. So there's no doubt this thing is not just sitting there, just, not building up pressure. It's definitely building up some pressure, and I think that thing there is a spot to watch pretty closely. That's the Garlock Fault structure there in Southern California, shear fault. We did have some movement up in Northern California, right around the Lake Almanor area in Chester, or south of Chester area, 2.8 near Prattville, California, 2.1 kilometers for that earthquake. And also a little deeper movement here south of Mount Lassen, which sits up here about 15 miles or so. There was a 1.6 near a beautiful town of Mineral, 13 kilometers, somewhat deep for that earthquake activity there in Northern California. And as I mentioned, Cascadia, southern part to the north part remains relatively quiet. We only seen one little microquake up here, 2.4 in Washington at 12.5 kilometers for that earthquake. Just kind of keep an eye on this area, folks. I don't think we need to draw anything on the map here that we can see a lot of activity from the Gulf northward, and that's just not happening out of the blue. It has been happening for the past couple days here, so we're keeping a very close eye on that region of the west coast. Movement in Texas, Oklahoma, all looking pretty quiet. New Madrid area pretty quiet as well. So we work our way down here along the South American plate. Things are kind of mellowing out a little bit. We did see some further deep movement yesterday, but that has since subsided. There is no further activity here today. Just a little earthquake near Ecuador area, 4.6, 66 kilometers for that earthquake below the surface there into the Peru-Chile Trench. Way off in the west eastern part, the Pacific Rise, 4.6. Wow, look at the location. I've been watching these. If you've seen my videos, you've been watching them in the past, you'll know I talk about the number 333 a lot. I've been seeing that number quite a bit. not only in when I'm looking up earthquake stuff and doing my studies here, but also just in my personal life. If I'm out driving around or getting gas or something, I've always seen that 333 number, and it's right there again, right in my face. What else we got here, folks? Hawaii, big island of Hawaii, showing some movement once again. This time, migrating, I should say, away from this little southeast zone that we've been seeing for the past couple years or so. It's been a hot spot of activity. Kilauea seen some signs up here of increased pressure, somewhat shallow activity, but we did have a 1.9, the latest quake, pretty deep movement just to the east-southeast of the Kilauea volcano, so kind of keep an eye on that region. Mauna Loa also showing some seismic unrest as well, with 3 microquakes around that vicinity. Also way out here, if you look around the Loihi Seamount, we haven't seen too much movement here, except for today. 2.7, just very close, very, very close to the Loihi Seamount underwater volcano out there in the Pacific. Japan area also showing some heightened earthquake activity to the north and south. You can see some 4s kicking off, including a 5.0 that kicked off earlier, late last night, early this morning. So things kind of ramping up along the Pacific Plate. Also through the Solomon Islands, down south through the Kermadec Trench, all showing some heightened earthquake activity as well, with quite a few 5s and some deeper movement near the Vanuatu area. 127 kilometers for that earthquake. And also over here, as we work our way to the west, seeing some movement around the India area, and also the Caspian Sea. 5.1 over here, around the Middle East as well. Mediterranean Sea, relatively quiet. South Sandwich Islands area is quiet as well, except further to the west of this little area, the Trench region, where we've seen that large earthquake earlier, a couple months ago, or a month ago. Probably by now a couple months. 4.9 in Scotia Sea. That's about the only activity reporting down in that region at the moment. Looking at the Yellowstone activity in the Wyoming area, it's just I don't even know why I had this tab pulled up on my updates. I like to check it, but for now things are extremely quiet at Yellowstone National Park. Extremely quiet. Tremor map from last night. Of course, it hasn't been put out today. Only 40 epicenters into Northern California area. While we have seen some tremor activity over the last couple days, it has not been significant. Most of the pressure, I think, we're either at a standstill right now of far as subduction goes with the Juan de Fuca plate. I think we've kind of hit a time frame of where we're kind of standing still. If you look at this map right here, this is the over the past years or so, few years, past decade of tremor activity, and it does go up and down. It does have its quiet time, so we're entering into a quiet spell at the moment there with the tremor activity. But the West Coast, let me tell you, southward, you draw that line here from Reno southward, pretty heightened earthquake movement. Let's look at a little bit closer detail. Around the Antelope Valley area, we're seeing some increased activity as well. They did have a 2.5 earlier near Walker, California, the Antelope Valley. That's this area right here. Also around the Long Valley Supervolcano, right here, Long Valley Supervolcano. Seen some activity as well, just to the outside of the caldera, to the southwest and south of Mammoth Lakes. A pretty good swarm of activity scattered about the land. Bishop, California, seen some movement as well with a 3.2. It's just very active, folks. A lot of, if you can draw a map or draw an X on the map here when it comes to areas to watch, at least in my book right now, would be this area very closely. The Southern California area, Baja California, Gulf of California region, all showing something brewing, and it could be on the larger size. So we keep an eye on that very closely. What else we got to cover? Not a whole lot in the Space Weather Department, folks. It's extremely quiet there as well. Sunspot activity, very quiet, diminishing. It's been that way for the past couple days. Geomagnetic forecast only calls for some slim pickings in the Aurora forecast. And other than that, there's not a whole lot there on the sun that we can really chat about. Sunspots are very tiny, if that's the word. Extremely tiny. Might need a microscope there to spot these little sunspots out. All right, guys, we're gonna jump off here. Keep an eye on the West Coast. Like I said, I just have a hunch, and looking at that map, there is just an extreme uptick, and it has been for the past couple days. So it's a spot to watch very closely. Have a good night, folks. If anything else pops up, we'll be back on. Just kind of outside doing some photography in the field, in the back field here. It's pretty green where I live right now here in Northern California, and that's always a nice sign. Kind of makes things grow out here, and that's pretty awesome. Got quite a few mushrooms in the field. Not for sure what they are, but they're popping up all over the place. They're kind of cool to take some pictures of, and of course all the greenery and the wildlife that's out here right now. Kind of nice to see. Over the past 2 winters, at least last year and the year before, it's been awfully dry. So I'm happy, very happy to see we're starting off really wet so far this year. All right, guys, have a good night. Have a good weekend. We will chat you a little bit later. Peace out.